Well, hey everyone, I'm presenting Chromatic Typewriter, exploring alternative methods in digital 2D art creation. I'm Lane Snively. This is my imaginary friend, Quentin Hetland. I'm a computer science major. He's a computer science major. Problem is we couldn't find a software that simulates a real chromatic typewriter, so we decided to create it. A real chromatic typewriter stamps one color per key, which is very slow. I began by implementing a digital version of the mechanical thing. Eventually, I sped up the process to allow a user to stamp multiple colors with multiple keys at a time and get the same effect. This is the UI. Everything with yellow buttons are navigation buttons, the red buttons are save, purple buttons are load, and blue buttons are settings. There's two editors. There's the canvas editor and the text brush editor. With the canvas editor, you can edit the canvas using the keyboard by typing, so it feels like you're typing to draw rather than drawing with a stylus pen or your finger. And if you want to, you can also draw with a stylus pen or your finger. And this is an example of the color to key character mappings. And there's an example of the chromatic typewriter in use. I want to talk about this more. So with the canvas user interface, it can save a canvas as an image to a local folder called Chromatic Typewriter. It can save 50 images for a GIF. It can't produce a GIF using the app, but it saves 50 images locally to use third-party software to create a GIF with. It can clear the canvas, and if you want to set the background color to something else, it sets the background color as the last character of the text brush if the text brush is not empty. The Select Image as Canvas button resizes an image so that it fits within the drawing view and sets it as the background. The Keyboard button summons the keyboard. The text brush viewer shows the current text brush, and if it's too big, it says Converted Image. The Full Screen button removes all other buttons and leaves only the drawing view. Current settings are automatically persisted when navigating between full screen and canvas editor, and the bristle size picker chooses either the bristle size if the text brush is small or pixel density if the text brush is huge. And with the text brush user interface, it can save a text brush as a text file. It can load a text from a text file as a text brush. It can clear the text brush that's stored, and my favorite feature of the app is the Convert Canvas to Text button. It maps bitmap pixels to characters. It finds the lowest distance between the pixel colors and the provided key color map and assigns a character in place of the pixel. And I also included a canvas viewer. And so in the text editor, this is the hint it gives you. It says keyboard characters represent colors and characters represent bristles in the brush. So if you think of a paintbrush, all of the bristles are just needle points, but if you replace each one of those with an individual color, you can treat it as a stamp and stamp really nice detailed pictures, or just use it as a brush, as you would a regular paintbrush. So this is an example of a text brush using each valid character as a filament. So I used all digits and uppercase and lowercase letters, comma and period. And when you hit the paste brush button with that text brush, it pastes at the 0, 0 location. So it's perfect every time. But if you want to also use that brush to draw with your finger, you can draw with it as well and change the settings of the brush. And you can change the settings of the filament shape and the size. So if I go back and forth really fast, you can see that I've added a selection indicator for the bristle settings. You can have square, circle, or character, and fill and stroke settings for each bristle. And you can change the size and density of that brush. Another feature is the Save 50 Images for a GIF. It uses a history to remember everything that the user has done. It uses a list to store all the bitmaps, and when the list reaches 300 members, it just starts randomly deleting them and maxes out the list size at 300, so it never grows above that size. And when it saves 50, it just saves 50 evenly spaced bitmaps throughout that history. And you can use those images to create a GIF with of your drawing. This is my favorite feature, the Convert Image to Text brush. I want to show you some comparisons between the original photos and the pasted text brush after they were converted. This is how I show the number of colors that are available. There are probably thousands of colors you could actually use as combinations of all the different red, blue, and green values, but I only assigned 64 colors. So when you convert something that has a really diverse color, you can really tell the difference. But if you have an image that is mostly black and white, or the image already contains colors that I've mapped to colors, then you can hardly tell the difference. Like a black and white image like this, but when you have lots of colors, you can really start to see the difference more. Yeah. And so Chromatic Typewriter is available on the Google Play Store, so if you want to download it and install it, it is free to do that right now. The problem is that it's an Android exclusive, so it's only available on Android devices and Chromebooks. So if you have an iPhone, it's not available yet, but I eventually want to clone the Chromatic Typewriter and publish it to the Apple Store so that it's available to more artists. And I think it would be cool if it remained unpaid and ad-free, and I also want to open source the GitHub repository, so if anyone wants to manually change the color mappings themselves, they can, or add more features or make it prettier. So that's the Chromatic Typewriter. Thanks for your attention.
I may have missed it, but did you implement a feature to undo any changes you made to your picture?
Yeah, I didn't put that in the presentation, but that was one of my favorite things. That feature is what led to the GIF feature, because I implemented the history, so it remembers up to 300 bitmaps in a history of the edits and then starts deleting them randomly. But I implemented a backspace feature with the keyboard, so even if you didn't type anything at all, if you just used a converted text brush to draw with, you can open the keyboard, hit the backspace key, and it'll delete up to 300 bitmaps of your last edit history, which is kind of a lot. I first wanted to put it at 1,000, but it was too much for my tablet to handle. My phone handled it just fine, but my tablet isn't as powerful, and it would slow it down a lot. But 300 is actually quite a lot. It's like 2 or 3 minutes of drawing. I just like draw for 2 minutes straight, and it deletes all of that. So That's kind of a secret feature, I suppose. Lars?
So in the demo that you showed where you were kind of typing on the keyboard, it looks like the keyboard itself, the letters aren't colored, right? So do you have to, how do you know what letter corresponds to which color? Do you have to remember this legend that you have there?
So
Yeah.
when the keyboard, your actual keyboard for typing on shows up, I tried not to cover up the keyboard button, but it's kind of small. In the UI, I put the this color mapping on there as a keyboard button, so that it's kind of small, but you can kind of tell that if you want to use uppercase Q, it's dark red, but if you want to use S, it's green. Numbers are white through black, so there's probably a better way to implement that, but that was best way I could, I suppose. Allie?
How did you decide which colors would be on the keyboard?
I used GPT-4 to help me with that. So I just asked it choose. I asked it to take a color gradient and just choose a bunch of colors in there and assign it automatically because I didn't want to spend 5 hours typing with that. Because I did the first time. My first iteration of this app, so I put this on the Play Store like 30 different times. This is like version. The last one I uploaded to the Play Store was version 420, whichever day that was, a few days ago. So there's been 420 different versions, and the first version I've had only had uppercase or lowercase characters, so it had half the colors and no numbers at all. And I implemented those exactly to match this, but it didn't satisfy me. There weren't enough colors, so I just asked GPT to add some more colors for me. Alana?
Yeah, so you're using what looks like to be like the standard Android like keyboard. You didn't like implement a separate one within your app, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about doing that, but I thought that would be super gross, and it would take a long time. And there's a problem with that is if I implemented my own keyboard, it would have to be buttons, so it only worked with touchscreen, so you couldn't connect. Like if you were on a Chromebook, you couldn't use it as an actual Chromatic typewriter with the keyboard, or if you had a tablet and a Bluetooth keyboard, you can actually use the Bluetooth keyboard or whatever external keyboard. So had to do it this way for the external keyboard to work.
What was your greatest technological hurdle in your building this?
Persistent data. There's two things. I had a really hard time with getting all the data to like the drawing view to remember itself after you switch between fragment navigation. So when you switch to the text view and then switch back, the canvas was reset, and I had a hard time persisting that. But I figured out that you just had to wait because I was adding it too soon in the fragment life cycle. So I gotta restore it, and then it would just like reset it in the binding because instead of using find view by ID, I used a binding for everything in here. So when the binding was inflating, it would inflate after I restored it, and so I had to wait. I just added like a 10 millisecond wait, and then it worked. So that was the first biggest challenge, was the data persistence thing. And then the biggest challenge I'm having now is strings the max string size is pretty huge. It's like 1 million characters or something. And the converted, when you convert an image to text, the text size is about 60,000 characters, which is about how many pixels there are in a high definition image. And when I have a string being stored that's that big, whenever the app goes in the background, or you try to call an intent, the app crashes and restarts. But that's not really an issue, because if you want to select an image as a canvas, it'll crash the app, but it doesn't matter because you're resetting it anyway. So that wasn't an issue. I didn't think that I needed to really fix that at this time. But everything works just fine, so other than that.